All right, thank you all for joining us. Welcome to the membership orientation. I am going to turn it over to our interpreters today to talk about how to access interpretation. We have Petri and Maria today. Thank you.
Thank you, Tammy. Buenas noches, good evening. Primero vamos a dar esas instrucciones en inglés y después en español. We will first give these instructions in English and then in Spanish. Next slide, please. My name is Maria Angelica. My pronouns are they and she. And tonight, alongside with my colleague Patri, we'll be providing interpretation in Spanish and in English to ensure that we can all participate here in the language that we prefer between English and Spanish. If we can go to the interpretation slide, please. Oops. So this is a multilingual space where if you're able to hear, you'll be able to hear participants in Spanish and in English. If you prefer to listen and participate in English, we ask that you please activate the Zoom interpretation feature in the following way. In a moment, you're going to see the visual instructions in the screen, and we'll also drop these instructions in the chat. If you're joining from a computer, if you can please click on the globe at the bottom of the screen that says interpretation, and you choose English. If you're joining from a phone or a tablet, you can tap the three dots at the bottom right of your screen where it says more, choose interpretation, choose English, and at the top right, tap done. If you have any issues with interpretation, actually a pause. I don't see the interpretation slide on the screen. I'm not sure if it's just on my end.
Okay, so I apologize. For me, I see it. So may I ask what you see on your screen right now?
I see the first slide, HIV caucus.
Oh, okay, hold on. I apologize. Let me stop sharing and try again because on my screen, I was advancing. Okay.
Cool, yes.
All right, excellent.
Okay, can you please go to the previous one, the one in English?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you so much. Perfect. So the instructions of what the screens look like to choose interpretation are on the screen if you can see. If you have any issues with interpretation at any point, please let us know and we'll be happy to support you. If you can let us know in the chat. And a loving reminder for those who will be participating to please speak at a moderate pace so we can interpret everything you're saying and we don't leave anyone behind. Thank you. Buenas noches, mi nombre es María Angélica, mis pronombres son ella y ella, y hoy con mi colega Patri, cuyos pronombres son ella, ellis, estamos interpretando en español y en inglés para que todos podamos participar en este espacio en el idioma que prefiramos. Next slide, please. Este es un espacio multilingüe donde vamos a poder participar y escuchar en español y en inglés. Si ustedes prefieren participar y escuchar en español, si pueden oír, les pedimos que por favor activen la interpretación de Zoom de la siguiente forma. Van a ver las instrucciones visuales en la pantalla y también estamos poniendo las instrucciones en el chat. Si están conectando desde un computador, por favor hagan clic en el globo abajo de la pantalla donde dice interpretación y elijan español. Si están conectando desde un teléfono o tableta, por favor toquen los tres punticos abajo a la derecha donde dice más, eligen interpretación, eligen español y arriba a la derecha tocan finalizado. Si en algún momento tienen alguna dificultad con la interpretación y no están escuchando en el idioma que prefieren, por favor déjenos saber en el chat y con mucho gusto les apoyamos. Y recordándoles amorosamente a quienes vayan a participar que por favor hablen a una velocidad moderada para poder interpretar todo lo que vayan a compartir y no dejar a nadie atrás. Muchas gracias. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you providing language justice for us tonight. Oops, and I've got slides skipping. All right, everyone, thank you for joining us. This is Tammy Haught. I use she, they pronouns. I am co-executive director of the SARO project and the chair of the membership engagement committee. Joining me today, and I didn't do presenter slides, is Ronald Johnson, who is the chair of the caucus. Ronald, you want to introduce yourself a little bit more to everyone?
Hi, everyone, and welcome to this member orientation session. I'm so thrilled that all of us are taking this opportunity to be together. As Tammy said, I am Ronald Johnson, and I serve as chair of the steering committee for the HIV caucus.
Thank you, Ronald, and thank you for helping with this webinar tonight. And Melanie, thank you for letting people in from the waiting room. Just to let everyone know, I am sharing my screen, so I cannot also monitor the chat box. So if somebody wants to let me know if there's a question, we will take questions and answers at the end. But if there's something pressing that you have a question about, please drop it in the chat box and either somebody will nudge me or we will answer it at the end. In the meantime, if you'd please introduce yourself in the chat box, your name, pronouns, and where you are from. That would be great. So today we are going to do an overview, providing a little bit of the caucus history, who we are, and the committees. If you're on this webinar, you have signed up to be a member of the caucus, and we are thrilled to have you. We're hoping that after this time together, you'll have a greater understanding of the opportunities to get involved in the work of the caucus. So who we are, the U.S. People Living with HIV Caucus, or also known as the HIV Caucus, is a group of networks, organizations, and advocates dedicated to the Denver principles and the meaningful involvement of people with HIV and AIDS. We seek to create a diverse and accountable culture of leadership and engagement at both the state and national levels. Why we came together. So following the dissolution of NAPWA, the National Association of People with AIDS, which left people living with HIV without a national voice, longtime HIV advocate Vanessa Johnson and a group of people living with HIV activists and networks came together in 2010 to form the caucus. This informal collaboration was designed to create a unified voice for people living with HIV across the United States and to address a critical need, advocating for and ensuring the meaningful involvement of people living with HIV in shaping a strategy that directly impacts our lives and communities. Since its founding, the caucus has focused on developing PLHIV leadership, advancing HIV criminalization reform, reducing HIV stigma, and addressing social justice issues in the context of HIV. We believe it is essential for people living with HIV to set our own agendas and priorities, choose our own leaders, and speak together with a collective voice. So the steering committee composition includes anchor networks. Currently, there are 5 anchor networks: ICW North America, Positively Trans, the Reunion Project, SARO Project, and the Positive Women's Network USA. There are also 9 individual members and organizational members, which are the majority of the caucus steering committee. And the steering committee selects 4 officers, and there are 4 roles: the chair, which right now is Ronald Johnson, vice chair, secretary, and treasurer. The anchor networks are national networks of people living with HIV that serve as the stewards of the caucus, committed individually and collectively to ensure the sustained financial and operational stability and strategic development of the caucus. To carry out their role, anchor networks serve as the core membership of the Finance Committee of the Caucus Steering Committee. So here are the current members of the steering committee. Like I said, Ronald Johnson is the chair. Martha Cameron is vice chair. Vanita Ray is treasurer, and Kamaria Laffrey is secretary. Then we have community members, Malcolm Reed, Mark Misrock, Yolanda Diaz, Tori Cooper, and Teo Drake are representatives of Positively Trans. Wahida Shabazz El is a representative of the Reunion Project. Kivale Kadina is a representative for the Positive Women's Network. Gabrielle San Emitario, Gabrielle is a community member, along with Kim Moon, Michael Elizabeth, Deketra Griffin, and Marnina Miller is a representative of PWN USA. So the caucus operations, we are an all-volunteer organization and has no paid staff, but we do have a contractor, the wonderful Ebony Turk, who does administrative work and helps with the committee work. And at this point, I turn it over to you, Ronald.
Thanks, Tammy. So as we delve into the caucus and its structure, first want to highlight that the people living with HIV networks, that are many of whom are part of those anchor networks that Tammy described, they are so essential to not only the work and operation of the caucus, but I think to the community of people living with HIV. As the slide shows, networks are a mechanism through which we as people living with HIV can define our own agenda. They enable us to determine our priorities, to select the leadership of our choosing, not that is chosen for us. And they enable the creation of a collective voice of people living with HIV. For me, the networks are the embodiment of what MIPA means. They operationalize and make real what MIPA means and stands for. Next slide. And the call to action that we have in the caucus is to challenge the lack of meaningful involvement that still so much categorizes the HIV community, and it some pains all of us to say that even this far into the epidemic, last year we celebrated or commemorated the 40th anniversary of the Denver Principles, and we still have to fight for those principles every day and at every table, and that's the call to action. And we were launched, the caucus was launched to be that unified voice, to strive to be that unified voice of people living with HIV in the United States. And we continue to work towards that. And do we get it right all the time? No, and that's why we need you. We need to be enriched all throughout so that with new members, current members, we can work to be that unified voice and to make real what MIPA stands for. When those people stood on the stage and articulated for the first time, we are people living, using the terminology of that day, living with AIDS. We are not patients, we are not objects, we are the subjects of our lives. And that's what the call to action is all about. Next slide. One of the major operations of the caucus is to serve as one of the planning partners for AIDS Watch, along with the organizing partner, AIDS United, and the Center for Health Law and Innovative Policy at Harvard University. And AIDS Watch continues to be the largest federal lobbying day in the United States. We obviously had a hiatus during the pandemic, but in the last 2 years, we've come back strong and had hundreds of people from across the country coming to Washington, going through an intensive day of training and work sessions and preparing us to go the next day, a full day of making Hill visits, talking directly to officers of the members of Congress and telling our story. And people living with HIV have, from the very beginning of AIDS Watch, been the core, and our ability to tell our story is so very crucial. And I don't need to tell anyone how the next 4 years are gonna, it's our voice, and having a unified voice is gonna be more important than ever. Next slide. Another major operation that in which the caucus is involved is HIV is Not a Crime Training Academy, HINAC. Caucus is one of the 5 organizations that have come together as a coalition and have been organizing the HINAC Training Academy. We had the academy last year, and we are in the process now of developing the next HINAC. As you see the dates on the slide, May 31 to June 3. And HINAC has been, and as HINAC 6 is shaping up to be, a very critical piece of the HIV criminalization effort. That HIV is not a crime. We who are living with HIV our lives are not criminal. Our actions are not criminal based upon just the fact that we are living with HIV. So HINAC is really a very important part of our operations. Next slide. And as I said, it is part of the overall collective, Health Not Prisons Collective, of which the caucus is one of the 5 members, and united against the use of policing, prosecution, and imprisonment, and again, using our health status of being HIV positive as a stigma and a cause for criminalization. We are very committed. There are still over 30+ states that in some way or other have laws that criminalize being HIV. So we continue to fight to change, to modernize, repeal those laws. We've had successes, we've had setbacks, but we are still pushing forward. Next slide. About 3 years ago, the caucus came to develop a demanding better agenda, a federal policy agenda for people living with HIV. And this was the first comprehensive policy agenda developed by people living with HIV and expressing what our agenda, our policy agenda to the federal government, the issues of quality of life, going beyond the biomedical aspects. We are more than just suppressing our T cells. We know how important that is, but housing, mental health, our sexual health, our ability to have a balanced meal, all of this are issues and aspects that make up the quality of life. And that was what drove the Demanding Better agenda. Next slide. And the next phase, I think Tammy is going to take over and talk about our caucus committees.
Thank you, Ronald. So you are a member of the U.S. People Living with HIV Caucus. You have been added to the member Google group, but there is more that opportunities for your voice to be heard and included in our work. So there are 5 different committees that we have at this time. The Policy Action Committee, that is chaired by Malcolm Reed. Federal Strategy Committee, that the chairs are Marnina Miller, Martha Cameron, and Kamaria Laffrey. The Member Engagement Committee, chaired by me, Tammy Hott. The Fiscal Committee, the co-chairs are Vanita Ray and Ronald Johnson. And the Communications Committee, and the co-chair is Eric Fleiter. And in the next slides, I'll explain more what each committee does. So the Policy Action Committee, formerly known as the Federal Policy Committee, is a vital component of the U.S. People Living with HIV Caucus, with Malcolm Reed serving as the committee's chair. The committee plays a crucial role in shaping policy and advocating for the civil and human rights of individuals living with HIV and AIDS. A main priority is the development and composition of the Civil and Human Rights Policy Brief for AIDS Watch, a prominent advocacy event in the U.S. that Ronald described earlier. The primary purpose of the Policy Action Committee, also known as PAC, is to formulate effective advocacy strategies that combat detrimental bills and policies affecting the HIV community at both the state and federal levels. This committee is composed of passionate individuals, and I know several of you on here are members of the Policy Action Committee, with a deep understanding of policy development, legislative processes, and the unique challenges faced by people living with HIV. The committee's focus on writing the Civil and Human Rights Policy Brief for AIDS Watch demonstrates its dedication to advancing the rights of people living with HIV. This policy brief serves as a comprehensive document outlining key policy priorities, highlighting areas of concern, and proposing legislative or regulatory solutions. It is a vital tool for educating policymakers and advocating for changes that prioritize the well-being and dignity of individuals living with HIV. Through its advocacy efforts, the Policy Action Committee aims to promote equitable access to healthcare, address stigma and discrimination, support comprehensive HIV prevention and treatment programs, and safeguard the rights and welfare of the HIV community. By working collaboratively with key stakeholders and employing strategic advocacy techniques, the committee strives to achieve meaningful policy changes and improve the lives of individuals living with HIV across the United States. The Membership Engagement Committee, which I think is one of the best, obviously, coordinates orientation of members like this webinar, but also has 3 additional roles: coordinating listening sessions for member input, implementing plans to support the growth of PLHIV networks. And this is supported by the SARA project. Coordinating elections of new steering committee members, which we will talk about later on. And our meetings are the fourth Wednesday of the month at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. The Strategic Communications Committee is the voice of the caucus. It works with the other committees to highlight and promote priorities. And to be honest, right now, it is not currently meeting due to capacity issues. So I know some of you have signed up to be on this committee, and we are hoping to have some, whoops, sorry, somebody's not on mute, to start this committee working. But as a no-volunteer organization, we can only do what we have capacity for, but we do have volunteers from the membership engagement committee. And so hopefully can start having meetings more regularly with this communications committee. The fiscal committee is coordinated by the steering committee and is responsible for fundraising and fiscal management of the caucus. The Federal Strategy Committee works to ensure that the federal response to HIV reflects the meaningful involvement of people living with HIV. Some of the responsibilities are identifies and discusses key policy priorities, recommends the caucus's position on the priorities and specific policy goals, implements advocacy strategies to achieve this caucus's policy goals, and analyze federal government policy priorities for their commitment to people living with HIV. And this committee is coordinated by Positive Women's Network. Now, the Federal Strategy Committee's subcommittees are open to people living with HIV only. And currently there are 5 committees. MIPA, the Meaningful Involvement of People Living with HIV, which I will admit, I was a chair looking for a co-chair to help with that. We haven't met in a while. There's the Quality of Life Committee that is chaired by Martha Cameron. And the Quality of Life Committee has been busy along with the steering committee to coordinate a quality of life symposium at the White House that will happen in December. So great work coming out of that committee. Status Neutral Committee is chaired by Barb Cardell. And they have created fact sheets and different things talking about and leading webinars and educational opportunities to discuss status neutral. Then there's also a decriminalization committee chaired by Kamaria Laffrey, and an employment committee with Mark Misrock. Now, when here is the QR link and the bit.ly to fill out a Google form letting us know what committee you would like to join. We will then add you to the Google group for that committee or work group. So, and in the Google form is more information about the committees and when these subcommittees meet, so that you can see if that will fit into your schedule. And we hope that it will, because like Ronald says, we need more voices as we continue to do this work and to increase our capacity.
Tammy, I'm sorry, I wanted to say that we're working on the language justice as well.
Thank you, Yolanda. I need to add that to
Wahida and myself, and we'll be meeting. We meet every third Thursday of the month, and we have been working on that language justice, I guess, for the last 6 months. I think the summer we went in the crazy Wahidas, you know what I'm saying? Where everybody went on vacation, but we came back, and this week we'll have our language justice as well. Just wanted to plug that in.
Thank you so much, Yolanda, for uplifting that. And I apologize for not having it added to this slide deck, but I guarantee you before I send this slide deck out to people along with the recording link and all the other information that I will be sharing, I will get that updated. So thank you for mentioning it and uplifting that important committee as well. Oops, sorry. Oops. Now I'm turning it back over to Ronald.
Forgot my mute button. Thank you, Tammy. And I just want to give a further plug around the language justice, because it's the committee and the formation of the committee is a reflection of the caucus's commitment to language justice, and to make the commitment that all of the caucus activities will be in the spirit and the reality of achieving language equity and accessible. We know we have a ways to go to achieve that, to be 100% of our operations, but that's the aspirational goal. That's the realistic goal that Wahida and Yolanda and the Language Justice Committee will be working to help us achieve that. So the question is, how do you join the steering committee? And will be holding elections. We're going through beginning that process now to have elections in 2025 in next month, or next month, and just about 2 months to get the steering committee in place. And the process as outlined on the slides, we're inviting applications from current caucus members, organizational and networks, and individual advocates who are part of our caucus membership for open seats on the steering committee. The membership committee will review the applications and prepare a slate of nominations for the open steering committee seats. And then the steering committee will select the individuals, organizations, or networks to serve on the steering committee. A steering committee term is 3 years. At the end of the 3 years, a person has the opportunity to seek to be renominated for another term. And that is the overall process. Right now, we have 17 members on the steering committee. We did make a few years ago a commitment to grow the steering committee to what we now have as a maximum of 21 members. So through last year's process, the elections that we'll be going through, and the nominations process that we'll be going through coming in the next few months, culminating in January, and the for election and selection of the steering committee. I saw in a pop-up in the chat, the steering committee serves as the overall governing body for the caucus, and I would compare it to the board of directors of an organization. The steering committee meets monthly and hears reports from each of the committees that Tammy reviewed, and makes decisions on our overall operations, making sure that the caucus remains a viable organization, making sure that the caucus continues to strive and in reality to be the representative voice of the people living with HIV. I know we have committees and a steering committee. So in many ways, the committees that Tammy outlined are subcommittees of the steering committee, even though we're using the same nomenclature. But the steering committee as a whole is the sort of the governing body for the caucus. And I welcome when we have questions and discussion to get any further questions about the steering committee. So, but as I said, it's people on the steering committee have a 3-year term. The anchor networks have a sort of a standing representation. The 5 organizations that Tammy outlined in an earlier slide, they have seats on the steering committee. And the overall structure of the steering committee is such that the anchor between the individual members and the organizational members that are not anchor networks, they must constitute a majority of the steering committee. So that means right now we have 5 anchor networks. That means we have to have at least 6 members who are individual advocates or organizational. Actually, now it's about 12 organizational and individual members. So we have that assurance that while the anchor networks are essential, an important part in assuring the ongoing viability of the caucus, they themselves do not have a majority voice in the steering committee. Next slide. So here are the slides that about the application process. We'll have a webinar on December 10 to go over the application and go more in depth of how to nominate yourself or apply for a steering committee membership. Next slide. And our commitment is to you. We will host a webinar. We're committed to hosting a webinar at least 3 times a year in which organizational members and members of the caucus will have an opportunity to share what they are doing and what we should be advocating on in the next 3 to 6 months, and to include you in our committee calls and work. I think that's the conclusion of the slide. So I'll turn it back to Tammy, and hopefully we can engage with all of you on the call with your questions and discussions, because the caucus is you, and we need to make that a reality. Tammy?
Thank you so much, Ronald. And these slides and the links that are in there, I will be sending out tomorrow. Probably won't have time to do it tonight, along with the recording link to this webinar. And we'll include information about the committees. So, because I know we went through this rather quickly, but we wanted to open it up at this point to see if you have any questions. You can raise your hand and come off mute. AJ.
First of all, thank you for the presentation. And also, I think my only question is, how many committees can you actually sign up for and be a part of?
You can sign up for as many committees as you have capacity to participate in. So that would be up to you. Elder?
Hi,
Antoinette?
dear. How are you, Tammy? Good
I'm
to
fine,
see
thank
you.
you as well.
Well, you can't see me because I
Oh.
have COVID, so I'm not showing my face. It's all good.
Hope you feel better soon.
Yeah, I'm hanging in there. Could you please post what it was, the different committees? I know I want to be, I think, MIPA and the other one with you.
Okay, let me
I want to join those two.
All right. Yes, let me quick show this is something else that I will be sharing. It's the caucus at a glance, which is something that the membership engagement committee recommended that we create, the caucus creates to let you know the caucus at a glance. So here we have our mission statement, our vision, a brief history on the caucus, along with Denver principles and MIPA, the meaningful involvement of people living with HIV, along with the steering committee composition and caucus steering committee members. And then we have our caucus partnerships and collaborations, which Ronald talked about earlier. And then some of our achievements of the caucus, the Demanding Better agenda that Ronald shared. We participated in a congressional policy brief on HIV and aging. We held a successful strategic planning retreat, PACHA engagement. Some of the steering committee members and members of the caucus are on the Presidential Advisory Council on HIV and AIDS, ONAP policy meetings, the Office of National AIDS Policy. We have been meeting with Francisco Ruiz, uplifting issues that impact our community. Federal AIDS policy partnerships. We have members who participate in those calls. And then Ronald talked about AIDS Watch. Then we are also an organizing partner for U.S.CHA. And then other information of some of the different things that we have done. And then at the bottom of this document is the document that has more information on the committees. So you'll see it's the Policy Action Committee, the Membership Engagement Committee. Like I said, there is a Communications Committee that's currently not meeting. The Fiscal Oversight Committee is coordinated, and for that one, you have to be a member of the steering committee to participate, along with the Federal Strategies Committee. But there are the subcommittees for the federal strategy committees that people can join. So that includes the MIPA, meaningful involvement of people living with HIV, status neutral, decriminalization, quality of life, and we will add in the language justice committee. Did that help? And like I said, I will be sending these links with the different documents to you all and get that out by tomorrow morning, so you can have more time to review the different committees and have the links.
Okay, great.
And Wahida.
Yeah, I just want to raise that someone in the chat asked about MIPA. I don't know if Barry is still here. Could you just reiterate that so folks will know what we're talking about when we say MIPA?
Yeah, so thank you, Wahida, and thank you for uplifting that question. The meaningful involvement of people living with HIV and AIDS. It is, the cornerstone of the work that the caucus does. I know it's a cornerstone for Sarah Project and the other anchor networks. It means that we have the right to be at the decision-making tables, and not just at the tables, not just in the rooms, but also having input on the agenda. So we prioritize what the issues that are important to us, that impact us. So like I said, it's a cornerstone of the work that we do. And Ronald, would you like to add anything else? And then I see your hand is up as well.
No, I won't add, but my hand is up because I just want to correct myself. When I was talking about the steering committees, I said 17 members. We are now 15 members. That's 17 as part of our growth plan. But right now, we are 15 members.
And thank you, Ronald, for that clarification. And Lamar, is every committee a 3-limit term? No, for the committee work, it is for as long as you have capacity and interest in participating in the committee. The 3-year terms are limited to sorry, somebody came
Yeah,
off
the
mute.
steering committee term is 3 years, but there are no terms, as Tammy said, there are no terms for the committees. It's your commitment to being on the committee, and for as long as you are able to be what we hope an active member. But the steering committee term is 3 years.
Thank you, Tammy and Ronald, for the clarity.
Absolutely. Thank you for asking, Lamar. Are there any other questions that anyone has? Hearing none, like I said, I will work on getting a report sent out with all of the links, and then encourage you, if you are interested in becoming a member of the steering committee, to join us for that December 10th webinar. And then applications will be available after the recording link and after I have a time to finish that report, and it provides an opportunity for your voice to be heard, as well at the steering committee. But if you don't have the capacity, or if you apply and you don't get it, we really hope that you will join one of the committees, so that your voice is heard in as we are talking about our policy priorities and things that are impacting our lives. As Ronald talked about earlier, with the election, or 2 weeks out, and figuring out our new reality, we're going to need everyone at the table. So we are excited that you are members of the caucus, and we hope that you will join a committee, and help us as we navigate our new reality moving forward. And with that, I want to thank Ronald. Thank you so much for co-presenting with me, for being an amazing chair of the caucus. It is an honor to work with you. Sharon, I see your raised your hand.
Hey, I'm sorry, I just got my mic to work. Is there a time span on the caucus versus being on the steering committee?
So no, for the caucus members, you are a member of the caucus for as long as you want to be a member of the caucus. There is no term limits. We won't term you off or remove you from any of the Google groups unless you ask us to be removed. So the term limits are for the steering committee only. Great question. Thank you for asking.
Thank you.
All right. With that, I also want to thank Petri and Maria for providing the simultaneous interpretation today. And Ronald, do you have any last words?
Well, just to say again, thank you to everyone for participating in this webinar and for being a member. We have the caucus is you. It's not just a soundbite. That's a reality. And we need each other. We need the caucus. We need that voice. I know I'll speak for myself. I'm still in a little bit of a valley of despair following the elections last week. And for many of us, I know for me, it wasn't the outcome that I had hoped. But I know that as despairing as I may feel at the moment, what we have to do and what we need to continue to fight for is still alive. And the hope that represents, the hope for our lives. We know why we're here. Those of us have opportunities to advocate that others in our community don't have. And that means we have a privilege, the privilege of being an advocate, the privilege of speaking out, but that comes with a responsibility. And I think all of us really want to not to give in to the funk. And I know I'm still in it. So I know what it feels like. But I also know that, and I'm a dinosaur, so I was here at the beginning of this epidemic. So I know where we have come from and what we have achieved. And everything that has been achieved in this epidemic has been through advocacy, and people living with HIV have been at the core of that. And so thank you, thank you, thank you.
You're welcome.
With that, I will stop the recording. And thank you all. And like I said, watch for